fair share. Some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. So once again, we have to tackle media narrative versus reality. The mainstream media is ranting and raving about Joe Biden's comeback. The king is back is the narrative they're trying to convince you of. Here are some headline examples. Joy Reid claims Biden's garbled speech is proof that his age is not a factor. Biden's State of the Union address unofficially kicked off his re-election campaign. Dark Brandon shows up at State of the Union, mops the floor with lost Republicans. So the narrative is that Joe Biden's speech has turned everything around. Joe Biden has proved his competence as a great president. Through one speech alone, he's undone all of the damage of the last more than 2 years. And that narrative, of course, is a big fat joke, totally divorced from reality. And so let's have a real conversation about Joe Biden's State of the Union address. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, friends, so of course I watched Joe Biden's State of the Union address, so you don't have to. And as the media is portraying it as a big hoorah, the Joe Biden comeback, hitting hard against Republicans, those of us who are actually honest and paying attention can probably summarize the entire speech as this: a whole bunch of yelling, mumbling, and of course nonsense. And in all the parts where Joe Biden seemed at least half sober, somewhat coherent, the actual content, the stuff that he was saying, was nothing but lies and propaganda. Joe Biden started off strong by patting himself on the back, boasting to the American people about his economic track record.
2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight, after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years, because of you all, because of the American people.
Continuing with this job creation lie that has been debunked God knows how many times. People going back to work after COVID means job creation to Joe Biden, and so he is unironically claiming that he created 12 million jobs. The man's a con artist. He then went on to boast about creating 800,000 manufacturing jobs.
We've already created, your help, 800,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs, the fastest growth in 40 years.
This man is unironically trying to tell you that he's bringing back manufacturing from overseas to the United States. You know, Donald Trump actually tried to do this, and he was probably the most successful president in modern history, at least since the 1990s, since China joined the World Trade Organization and all the jobs started to get shipped overseas. But even Donald Trump failed in that mission, because it's almost an impossible task. Now, Joe Biden, who's implemented zero policies, nothing of significance to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States, is telling you that he's bringing manufacturing jobs back by using misleading data. Once again, people going back to work after COVID, people just going back to their manufacturing jobs. He's telling you that he's bringing jobs back to the United States. All right, Biden, everyone believes you. Great job. Now here's your ice cream and go back into the basement. What a slap in the face, as Americans are struggling more than they have in decades. As wages are down, household debt is skyrocketing, spiking interest rates are slowing down markets. Joe Biden is ignoring the reality that most Americans are facing and patting himself on the back and saying, what a swell job I'm doing. The lack of self-awareness in Washington is truly astounding. Kind of like this moment.
I want to give special recognition to someone who I think is going to be considered the greatest speaker in the history of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. Congratulations to the longest serving leader in the history of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell. Where are you, Mitch?
These standing ovations and these claims of the greatest of all time, the greatest Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, these Washington goons celebrating each other and clapping for each other. This moment was truly sickening, and it shows the same kind of disconnect, the lack of self-awareness. These are the same people who are constantly shafting the middle class, shafting the American people, yet they wine and dine and celebrate each other and act like celebrities, pat themselves on the back and say, what a swell job we're doing, as Americans continue to suffer. That's basically basically the vibe that I get from Democrats these days. You know, people say that Donald Trump is too negative. Well, is that the case? Is Donald Trump too negative? Or does his rhetoric and his stances really resonate with people because he actually tackles issues and severe problems that affect everyday Americans? You know, that's the difference. It's reality versus fantasy Democrat land. The whole narrative under Joe Biden's presidency has been nothing but fantasy. Look how great we're doing. Look how safe our communities are. Look at all the progress we're making. Progressives. As the world plunges into chaos, cities become less safe than they've been in decades. The southern border is in a complete crisis mode. The best meme to describe this administration is the dog sitting in the burning house with the caption, "This is fine." That's basically how it feels. Divorced from reality. At one point, Joe Biden said this,
But in the past 2 years, democracies have become stronger, not weaker. Autocracies have grown weaker, not stronger. Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Name me one.
Now, firstly, I'd like someone to explain to me what in the heck this guy is even saying. Name me a world leader who would change places with Xi Jinping. Name one, as he just starts to yell. I guess he's implying that China is losing and so no one would want to be in that position. But the preface to that quote, the context of the quote, is that democracies are getting more powerful and autocracies are dying. Thanks to Joe Biden. Divorced from reality. China seems to be growing in power each and every single day. They seem to be flaunting that power and disrespecting Joe Biden. The same goes with Russia. The same goes with Iran, or the OPEC oil dictatorships in the Middle East. Not to mention Afghanistan has been completely taken over by a Taliban dictatorship. It seems as though democracies have weakened and autocracies have become more powerful over the last 2 years that Joe Biden has been in office. Yet once again, this is fine, everything's better as the world plunges into chaos. Speaking of chaos, the southern border's in chaos, but Joe Biden's patting himself on the back, claiming that he's addressed the border crisis. By the way, the border crisis that he created.
Now have a record number of personnel working to secure the border, arresting 8,000 human smugglers, seizing over 23,000 pounds of fentanyl in just the last several months. We've launched a new border plan last month. Unlawful migration from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela has come down 97% as a consequence of that.
Totally divorced from reality. We've arrested X amount of people. We've seized X amount of fentanyl. But what he fails to mention is, of course, the context of those quotes. We're seeing record amounts of fentanyl crossing the border and people crossing the border. And the numbers that he's citing, the seizures and the arrests, pale in comparison to the multiplicative growth of the crisis that he created at the southern border in the last 2 years. We're on pace for probably 2.5 million illegal border crossings. And of course, well over 3 million if you count the people that aren't being caught in the fiscal year of 2022. That is 3 to 4 times worse than what we were seeing under the Trump administration. Oh, we're seizing all this fentanyl. Look how good of a job we're doing. As 100,000 Americans die every year from fentanyl overdoses. This is fine. Everything's fine. I got it under control, Joe Biden says. We're arresting human smugglers. As an untold amount of lives are lost every year in human smuggling rings, and the cartels are making billions off the more than 3 million people crossing the border every single year at the current pace. I mean, what a scumbag. He also said this.
Make no mistake, if you try anything to raise the cost of protecting jobs, I will veto it.
The typical Joe Biden can't speak English meme. Then, of course, President Biden, the great unifier, the man that the media is telling you gave a historically great State of the Union address, the man who's going to bring Americans together, fearmongers and gaslights using January 6th and trying to connect it to the Paul Pelosi incident at Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi's home in San Francisco.
The last few years, our democracy has been threatened and attacked, put at risk, put to the test in this very room on January the 6th. And then just a few months ago, an unhinged big lie, assailant unleashed a political violence, the home of the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, using the very same language the insurrectionists used as they stalked these halls and chanted on January 6th.
And to that, once again, I only have one response. What a scumbag. Then the great unifier Joe, with his halo and his holy aura, once again, brings Republicans and Democrats together by spreading a nonsense political talking point, a straight up lie, a piece of propaganda that Democrats have been pushing lately, that Republicans are coming after your Social Security. Let's just say it didn't really go well for him.
Fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad.
A lie that we have debunked a million different times. Donald Trump is on the record saying Republicans are not going to go after Social Security. Kevin McCarthy, the current Speaker of the House, has also said the same thing on the record many times. Joe Biden, of course, claims to have the receipts and taunts all the Republicans who are booing him and calling him a liar, saying, "Come to my office and I'll show you the receipts." What he's referencing is a policy that was being suggested by Florida Republican Rick Scott over a year ago that suggested Social Security and Medicare spending should be reviewed and revised every 5 years. This was a policy suggestion by one Republican. It never became law. It was one individual who proposed this. And the whole point of contention was that every year it should be reviewed and possibly reformed. And the whole point of contention was that every 5 years it would be reviewed. And if the Senate couldn't come to an agreement on a budget, then essentially it would lapse. And Democrats are claiming that that policy, which was never passed, which was never adopted by the GOP, it was one suggestion by one individual. They're claiming that that amounts to Republicans trying to take away Social Security. No, what Republicans are trying to do is revise it every 5 years because these expensive government programs aren't being paid for in full. These programs are essentially going bankrupt. The Washington Post writes Social Security will become insolvent by year 2023, or 2033 rather. And so you have one Republican politician who suggested that every 5 years the spending should be reviewed. It's more Democrat lies, Democrat fear-mongering, trying to pit one party against the other instead of coming together to find common sense solution. You know, like running a government budget effectively. Joe Biden's entire speech was nothing but division, lies, an angry, yelling old man. This moment,
Cost of precision jobs.
a bunch of elitist politicians patting themselves on the back, telling you how good of a job they're doing as the state of the economy and the state of the country continues to spiral downwards. In other words, a massive slap in the face to pretty much every single American voter. And the media is trying to paint this picture as if Joe Biden did such a great job, and that through this one speech filled with lies, nonsense, and garbage, he's essentially cemented his position as the president and should run again in 2024 and win re-election. There's two words that I want to say right now, but I just can't. The first one starts with an F, the second one starts with a Y. That's just the Democrat machine being the Democrat machine. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.